You know, when we think of a high-tech heist, we usually picture someone drilling through a steel vault, right? Or maybe blowing the doors off. But what if the easiest way in was just to walk up to the guard, tell them you belong on the other side, and they just open the door for you? Well, that's the kind of digital heist we're cracking open today. We're going to dive into a type of hacking that doesn't break the code, it breaks the rules.
And that really gets to the core question here. What if we just forget about all the brute force attacks and those super complex code exploits for a minute? We're going to explore how attackers can exploit the very logic an application is built on, basically turning its own intended processes against itself. The flaw isn't some bug in a line of code. It's a loophole in the instruction manual that's been hiding in plain sight the whole time.
Okay, so this brings us to our first big idea, the logic loophole. This is the world of what security experts call business logic vulnerabilities. And it's a fascinating place where an attacker isn't trying to smash the system, they're trying to politely ask it to do something it absolutely shouldn't, just by exploiting the trust that's baked right into its operations. See, they're not breaking in, they're getting let in. To really get how this works, you've got to understand what a workflow is. Honestly, just think of it like a recipe. You have to add the ingredients in a very specific order to get the cake you want, right? Or maybe like a board game. You move your piece, then you draw a card, then you take an action. Apps are exactly the same. They have these really specific step-by-step instructions for pretty much everything, from signing up to making a purchase. And this right here, this is the heart of it. Hacking a workflow is a game of wits, not brute force. It's not about finding a flaw in the oven, it's about finding a flaw in the recipe itself. The system is just designed to trust that you, the user, will follow the steps in the right order. But a clever attacker comes along and asks, yeah, but what if I don't? What if I skip a step? Or what if I lie about which step I'm on? And that's the exact moment you go from being a user to being an exploiter. So how does an attacker even start? Well, like any good heist, the first step is always to case the joint. In the hacking world, that means you've got to methodically map out how the application is supposed to work. I mean, you can't bend the rules if you don't even know what they are. So an attacker will act just like a normal user, clicking through every single process, taking notes, and just trying to understand that intended path from start to finish. And yeah, this process should look incredibly familiar to all of us. It's the standard e-commerce checkout we've all been through a million times. You start at your cart, then you put in your shipping info, you pick a payment method, you confirm the order, and then, and this is the crucial part, the system processes your payment. Only after that payment is actually successful are you supposed to land on that final success page. Every single step is logical, and every step is supposed to depend on the one that came right before it. This whole thing is what developers call the happy path. It's the exact journey you are meant to take. Each step is like a checkpoint. But a hacker looks at this completely differently. To them, it's not a path. It's a map of security gates. And the question they're asking is, are any of these gates unlocked? Can I just walk around one? What if there's a secret tunnel that goes straight from step 1 all the way to step 6? And now the heist begins. Once an attacker really understands the rules, they can start to break them. We're moving from just looking around to actively exploiting the system. So let's look at 2 specific, really powerful techniques for manipulating an app's workflow to get stuff without paying a single dime. The first technique is, well, it's about as straightforward as it sounds, step skipping. Think of it as the digital version of just walking out of a store with a new TV because nobody bothered to stop you between the electronics aisle and the exit. The attacker is basically just betting that the final step of a process doesn't actually check to see if all the previous steps were completed. I mean, look at this. This is a direct instruction practically out of a hacker's playbook. So after you add an item to the cart, that's step 1, the attacker doesn't go to shipping or payment. No. Instead, they just manually change the URL in their browser, guessing the address of the final success page. And if the app is poorly designed, it sees the user on the success page and just assumes, oh, well, the payment must have gone through, and then it fulfills the order. No payment, full product. It's that simple. Now, this second technique, it's a bit more subtle, and you could even say it's more elegant. It's called state parameter manipulation. So instead of skipping steps, you're going through all the motions, but you're quietly lying to the system at a very critical moment. You're telling the application that a certain condition has been met, even when it absolutely has not. The vulnerability here is, it's just shockingly simple. Using a common tool, an attacker can intercept the data their own browser is sending to the server. They find a little parameter in there, something like payment_status, which is probably set to pending. All they do is change that one word to completed and send the request on its way. The system on the other end, because it's built to trust the data it receives, just sees completed and says, great, mark this order as paid and ship it out. All because it trusted one tiny piece of information it never bothered to double check for itself. So we've seen how this stuff can lead to direct financial loss, but this type of vulnerability is way more versatile than just that. The same principles, skipping steps or manipulating the state of a process, can be used to bypass critical security controls. And this is where things get really, really serious. We're moving from simple theft to complete account takeover. And the stakes here are completely different. On the one hand, you've got the payment bypass we just talked about. The goal there, financial gain. It's definitely annoying for the company, but the damage is kind of limited. But on the other hand, you see the goal of an MFA bypass. Here, the very same kind of logic flaw, the system just not properly checking the sequence of events, can let an attacker take over a user's entire account. The prize isn't just one product, it's everything. So how does this actually play out? Well, an attacker logs in with a username and password. The application then says, okay, great, now enter your MFA code. But just like in our payment example, the attacker asks, but do I have to? They might try just navigating directly to the main user dashboard URL, skipping the MFA page completely. Or they might intercept the request and change a parameter from MFA status equals pending to MFA status equals verified. It is the exact same logic, just applied to a far more sensitive security gate. Okay, so we've seen the techniques, but what is the real-world fallout? Why does this matter so much? Because these seemingly simple logic tricks can have absolutely devastating consequences for a business and for its users. The impact goes way beyond just a single free product or one compromised account. It actually erodes the very foundation of trust and security. The most obvious and immediate impact is, of course, direct financial loss. Whether it's through these payment bypasses or maybe abusing coupon codes or manipulating item quantities, these vulnerabilities hit a company's bottom line hard. In fact, according to the severity guidelines that security researchers use, any flaw that makes direct financial loss possible is pretty much immediately rated as critical. But the damage doesn't stop there, not even close. Like we saw with the MFA bypass, these flaws can lead to a complete account compromise. And from there, it can escalate to an attacker gaining access to sensitive user data, or in a worst-case scenario, mass data exposure for the entire user base. And once that happens, the most valuable thing a company has is just gone: customer trust. And that is something money cannot easily buy back. When it comes down to it, every single app you use, your entire digital life, runs on rules. We trust those rules are being enforced to protect us. But as we've just seen, the most dangerous threat might not be the person who breaks down the door, but the one who knows the rules so well they can just talk their way inside. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. Who's checking to make sure those rules can't be bent until they finally break?